Well, hey everybody, and welcome back to Washita Valley. Thanks for tuning in for this latest episode. Today, what we're going to be doing is raking a little hay. One of the things that I'd like to point out to you on this episode is kind of the pros and the cons of this 3-point mounted hay rake that I've been using lately. This first part, I've got drone footage. I had the drone up. But I'm also going to be doing a little bit of voiceover so I can kind of point out some things as we go along and rake this hay. Now I'm going to start with some of the cons since we're driving here. Now one of the things that I don't like about this hay rake is that despite the way it's designed, it does not flex very well. Now, from side to side, it flexes okay. You know, it flexes well enough because there's some bushings on the wheel arms that allow the wheels to go up and down as needed. But one of the things I don't like is that since it is a solid 3-point mount, when the front of the tractor either goes down into a dip or it comes up out of a dip, it will either float up too high off the ground and miss some hay, or it will just really mash the rake down into the ground, and the wheel teeth will dig into the dirt. So that's really one thing that I don't like. It's pretty inconsistent. Now another thing that I don't like is obviously it's narrow. For this size of tractor, I could pretty easily handle a rake twice the width of this rake here, and basically burn the same amount of fuel and get at least twice as much work done. So the width was right off the bat something that I felt was kind of inappropriate and is really kind of keeping my efficiency down from a fuel usage standpoint, as well as a just getting the work done in a timely manner standpoint. Now the third thing that I really don't like about this rake is, since that it is a hard 3-pointed mount, depending on the direction you're turning really dictates how wide your windrow that you're leaving is. Obviously, because this is only a single-sided rake, you have to rake one direction to start the windrow, and then when you get to the end of the field, or the back to where you started, whatever the case may be, you got to turn around and you got to go back the other way. Now that's okay, but as I'm going to demonstrate here just in a second, when I make a hard turn to the right, then it pushes the windrow way out to the right. However, if I make a hard turn to the left, which I'll make right up here in a second, it is going to make the windrow, it's going to leave a wider sort of non-homogenized windrow. You can kind of tell right there it left a little bit of a wide windrow. But I'll come out here in the middle of the field and I'll sort of show you exactly what I'm talking about. I'll be able to rake it back down. So if I'm out here, I'm going straight. If I make a hard turn to the right, then it's not that big of a deal. I can handle that. But if for some reason I have to make a hard turn to the left, well, it leaves a really wide, really non-uniform windrow. And so that's one of the biggest things that I don't like about it, because that just leads to inconsistent windrows, and it leads to windrows that are hard for my balers to pick up. My balers are both older balers. If you haven't seen them, you can go back in some of the later videos, or just stay tuned in some of the next videos, and you'll see both the round baler and the square baler. But they're older. They don't have very wide pickups. So when my windrows are not uniform, and They're not a uniform density, they're not a uniform width. It makes it really hard to get the hay picked up with the baler, and then I end up having to go back and hit spots that are too big to leave, but it's sort of a waste of time for me to go back and pick up. I don't want to leave a bunch of hay spots around in the hay fields, because one, that just looks bad, and then two, I'm getting paid by the bale to bale the hay, so I want to pick up as much hay as I can. So that's kind of a rundown on the cons. Now, the pros, the handful of pros that I have for this particular rake. One, it's narrow, and so it's easy to transport. One of the wheels on this actually flips up, and so it transports like a 4-wheel rake instead of a 5-wheel rake. The next thing is it's extremely simple to maintain. There's just some bearings you got to grease and some bushings you got to grease, and once in a while, I haven't had to yet since I've been using it. Once in a while, you might have to change a finger on one of the wheels. That's pretty much it. So low maintenance. That's a good thing about it. Probably the third thing about it, and most importantly, it was free. Now, if you don't remember, this rake and my square baler and a couple of other implements were on a piece of property that my mom and dad bought. And when my mom and dad bought them, my dad and I were looking around, and we found the hay rake and the square baler and the other piece of equipment, and this tractor, as a matter of fact. So this wheel rake for me was free, because Dad didn't want it. He's like, if you fix it up and you want to use it, fine. I'm not interested in doing anything with it, really. So it was free, and that was probably the biggest thing. But what this rake has done is it's allowed me to get started in the hay making business without having to go buy a rake. Alright, so Kat has brought me a tool. My sister Kat, she's brought me a tool that I need. So we're going to run up and we're going to get that from her. Alright, so I just finished unhooking this old hay rake, because the tool that Kat brought me is a new hay rake. Yep, it's a new to me hay rake. So the way I came about this hay rake is that I like to shop Marketplace, Craigslist, etc. for farm equipment. And usually what I'm looking for is the cheap stuff. Once in a while I run onto somebody who has, like they have an estate, and somebody's, passed away. There's an estate that's got a whole fence row full of equipment. A lot of times it's old junky stuff that is really not good for anything anymore, unless you're a collector or you're, just like a vintage farm equipment collector. But I usually always look at them to see, what all is in the posting, and I just happened to run across this thing. Now, this was the only, I'd say, modern piece of equipment that was in the posting. Come to find out, they had already sold some of the better stuff to a neighbor. But this thing is a Kuhn. It's a 12-wheel rake, and it's pink. And it didn't leave the factory pink. It left the factory the original Kuhn red, but because this thing was rode hard and put up wet its entire life, this thing is so sun faded that now it's pink. When I got this thing, all the bearings were shot. Wheel bearings were shot. Like for the tires, the transport wheel bearings were shot. It didn't even have wheels. It didn't even have the brake wheels. They were all missing. The bushings in the thing were completely shot. So I got this rake for pretty cheap. As a matter of fact, I pretty much just traded other equipment that I had for it. But I've had to put a lot of money into it. So you see up there in the top right where I keep track of my money for you guys. If you'll remember in the last episode, I had just gotten paid, and I had just done some work for Kurt. We baled the alfalfa straw down in the bottom there. Well, it took basically all the money that I made last week at work, the money that I had saved and hadn't used up yet from prior weeks at work, plus the money that Kurt paid me for baling straw to just buy bearings and wheels for the rake. So I got 80 bucks left, and I had a little bit of money left over, but I had to put some fuel in some things and buy some grease and some stuff like that. But we have got a 12-wheel rake that is over twice as wide as the old rake, and my efficiency is just going to go through the roof. So let's get going. I'm going to put the drone back up, and I'm going to kind of do some more voiceover stuff as we start to use this thing. Alright, just got her all hooked up fine. This actually hooks up to a 2-point bar that goes in the bottom links for the 3-point, and let's go try it out. So as I was mentioning before, I actually, cash-wise, I came out in pretty good shape on this rake here, because it was in such poor condition and it was missing a lot of expensive parts. What I actually did is I asked the guy, you know, if he had any room on the price, and he said he did, because he understood that it needed a lot of work. Well, I also asked the guy if he was interested in doing any trading, and he said sure, because that's the kind of the business he's in, is trading for old piece of equipment. It's kind of his hobby. He's not necessarily trying to make a lot of money. He just likes to trade. So what ended up happening is I traded the old plow and the old spring tooth cultivator that, if you'll remember, came with the Krieger place that Mom and Dad bought. I'll put a link up in the top right hand corner for that episode. So I traded those two pieces of equipment plus the 5-wheel rake that we were just using. So now this is the one I've got here behind me, is going to be my only rake. But I traded those 3 pieces of equipment for this one piece of equipment, and then once I got it, had to, you know, buy the wheels and the bearings and all that kind of stuff and do all the work on it. So I actually, from a cash flow standpoint, I didn't actually exchange any currency. I just exchanged 3 pieces of equipment that were in decent but old shape, for this new piece of equipment that was basically on death's doorstep. Alright, let's go. We're going to go back to the drone, we're going to fold this thing out, and we're going to see how it goes. Alright, so far so good. Now I will say that I have not tried raking. This is the first time that I have raked with this rake. Mostly because until late last night I didn't have the thing completely put back together. I came straight over here after work to get started with the old rake, and Kat brought me this one as soon as she could. So what you're watching here, this is actually the first time that I have raked any hay with this rake. And I have to say, so far, it seems to be working very, very well. The amount of time that this thing is going to save me is just, it's amazing. Like I said before, this thing is just over double the width of the 3-point mounted rake, and since it's in a double V, or it's in a V configuration, I'm not going to have as much trouble when I go to make turns. My windrows are going to stay more consistent. I don't know if you can tell from this angle. I'll see if I can get a close-up, mention up a close-up view later. But these wheels are actually, they have wind guards. That's what the black is. You know, on the old rake, you could see right through the rake wheels, and if you'll notice from here, the wheels, they almost look black and yellow, and it's because they are black and yellow, because it's got black wind guards on the insides of the wheel. Now, one of the things that the wind guards do is that it reduces the tendency of the wind wanting to blow the hay around as it's being raked on windy days. Now, another nice thing about the wind guards is that, depending on who you talk to, and I did some research before I bought the wind guards for these wheels, because you could buy the wheels from John Deere. You could buy them just the wheel without the guard, or you could buy the guards and install the wind guards on the wheels, which is what I did. Depending on where you read and who you talk to and what research you do, most of the people that run wind guards actually say that it helps the feed, and it helps the consistency of the way that the hay is raked. So the hay tends to move through the rake in a more consistent fashion. And another thing is that, since this is going to be the only rake that I have, and I do plan on raking quite a bit of alfalfa with it, a lot of folks say that with the wind guard on the inside of the rake, that it's the rake wheels are also quite a bit more gentle on crops such as alfalfa, where you really want to keep as much as the leaf material with the stems as possible. So I'm hoping that proves correct, and that it enhances the quality of the hay when it comes to things like alfalfa. So a couple of things that I've noticed right off the bat with this rake is that it's going to need some adjustment, because part of it is just because I did the outside rounds with the other rake that was narrower, but this thing's going to need some adjustment, because when I get to the end and I go to turn around, the back couple of wheels grab it grabs the windrow on the two outside rounds, and it messes that windrow up. So if you look over there to the right, you'll see a bunch of windrows that are all kind of piled up and kind of messed up. That's one thing that I'm definitely going to have to fix and take care of, because I don't want that happening certainly very often. Because again, that just makes it hard for me to get that hay baled with my baler. Another thing, a good thing that I noticed is that I can actually rake quite a bit faster now, and I think part of that is just because it's a V-type rake, and so I don't have to worry about necessarily putting two windrows together, on the up pass and the down pass with the single-sided rake. Now that I have a double-sided rake, it all just kind of goes together. And I think another part of that is because the wheels on this rake are actually quite a bit larger in diameter than the wheels on my older rake. So I think that has something to do with it as well. I also noticed that, especially when I'm going with the direction that I cut the grass, so that the grass is laid down, it makes a much more consistent windrow than the other rake did. And again, I think a lot of that is just the fact that this is a double-sided rake, and it just rakes the hay together, versus having to match the hay on the down and back pass like I did with the single-sided old rake. So far I'm pretty happy. Now down towards the end of the fields, like as you notice, I'm going across the direction in which the grass is laid down. It doesn't do quite as good a job with the consistency of the windrow, but that's sort of to be expected. I think. I think it's better since it's a longer rake. So in other words, it's got more wheels and it has bigger wheels. So I think it does a better job commingling the grass. However, I don't think I can expect it to do a fantastic job when it's going straight across the grass that has been cut in a perpendicular direction. But overall, so far, especially with the speed that I'm able to rake at, and the fact that it's over twice as wide, I'm very, very pleased with the rake. All right, so just got finished raking all this up. This is a pretty good size field. I actually haven't even asked Kurt how big it is yet. But it amounted to several hours worth of time. It seemed like I was when I mowed this with my little sickle bar mower, seems like I just mowed for an eternity. And this is definitely, I think, the largest field that I have mowed so far. I think by the time I'm done here at Kurt's place, because there's another pasture over on the other side of the road that kind of winds around his soybean fields that I've mowed as well, that I'm going to hop across the road and go rake. I think the initial takeaways with the new rake are, it's fantastic because I can rake faster, and it's over double the width of my old rake. However, down here towards the end of the field, I don't know whether I'll need to make my outside rounds last, or the rake definitely needs to be adjusted somewhat. But I think, you see these big clumps of hay and these big gnarly balls of hay here the rake definitely needs to be adjusted, and I probably should have stopped and adjusted it already, but I was just kind of being stubborn and trying to limp through. But I think that when I go to bale this, I'm really going to be unhappy with myself in that I didn't take the time to stop and adjust the rake when I could have, because I think these outside rounds, especially the second outside round that I'm lined up with right now, I think it's just going to be really hard to bale, and I'm going to be unhappy with myself when it's time to bale it here, probably this evening. Anyways, let's hop across the road and we'll see how far we get on the other field. It was actually mowed a couple of days later than this field, so I'm gonna have to check and see if it's dry enough. So here's the if you'll remember back, I don't know, I think the name of the video was Part-Time Farming. These are the soybean fields that I helped Kurt plant in that episode. They're really doing well. They look nice, healthy, and so there's a pasture up here, and then as you see here, there's some waterway areas that that Kurt typically mows for hay. So we're gonna go get started on the outside rounds. I'm gonna try to do the outside rounds and then make some adjustments to this baler, or to this rake rather, so that I can do the outside rounds first. If that doesn't work, then I may just have to go to doing the outside rounds after all the rest of the hay is raked. That'll just I think it'll make raking the rest of the field more difficult, but we'll see. We'll just see what we got to do. Man, this thing is it's massive. It is absolutely massive compared to what I was using. It's just, you look back here and it's amazing to see how much hay I'm actually getting put together. Alright, here we go. And that windrow is just really a lot more consistent than I could ever hope to do with the older rake as well. And it's not nearly as difficult to turn corners and keep a good windrow as it was before either. I'm very, very pleased that I was able to find this rake. Even though it was in pretty poor condition when I found it, I ended up not being out a whole lot of money, and it's definitely forward progress as far as my baling operation goes. Huh? That looks like Gus's truck over there. Wonder if he's just watching the show or what's going on. Huh. No, he's waving at me. I wonder what he wants. Guess I'll hop off and go see. Man, this thing is really consistent. This is going to be so much nicer to bale once I get it all adjusted right.
Wow. Nice pink hair, Rake.
Thanks. It's sun faded.
Were you expecting someone else when the window rolled down?
Well, it's your dad's truck, so
Well, Mike tells me that you're hiding from me, so I figured I'd come see what you're up to.
I'm not hiding. I've just been busy.
Mike told me about that too. I'm glad you came out ahead on your deal with Steve. Anyway, the reason I came by is that Dad's getting a bunch of new equipment in, and I know how much you enjoy the mechanical side of farming, so I'm inviting you to stop by and see it sometime.